The front door clicked shut, barely muffling the violent howl of the autumn storm raging outside. David leaned his entire body weight against the cold wooden panels, his breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Freezing rain dripped constantly from his soaked canvas jacket, pooling into a dark puddle on the worn linoleum floor of the hallway. His hands, heavily calloused and scraped raw from 12 hours of laying brick in the freezing mud, were shaking so violently he could barely turn the deadbolt. He didn't care about the mud he was tracking into the apartment. He didn't even care about the sharp, shooting pain radiating from his lower back with every slight movement. The only thing echoing in his mind was the terrifying, undeniable realization that his body was completely shutting down, and he was the absolute only thing standing between his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, and the harsh, unforgiving reality of the world. If he fell, who was going to catch her? Every single day since Lily's mother walked out of their lives, David had made a silent, sacred vow. He promised the universe, and he promised his little girl, that he would be the unbreakable wall shielding her from any storm. He was supposed to be the fortress. He was supposed to be the ancient oak tree providing shade and absolute safety. I swear to the heavens above that I will maintain my strength and an iron will. I will forever be that towering, unshakable tree, providing shade, guiding the way, and protecting my child for as long as she flies. Hit that subscribe button right now to support our journey and strengthen the fortress of family. Keeping that promise meant taking the brutal jobs that nobody else in town wanted. It meant standing in a trench filled with ice water at 6 in the morning, hauling heavy wet gravel, until his muscles literally screamed. Today had been the absolute worst of them all. The morning autumn rain had aggressively turned into a torrential downpour by noon, dropping the temperature dangerously close to freezing. His foreman had offered to let the crew go home early, but it would be completely unpaid. Unpaid meant they would be exactly $50 short for the heating bill this coming month. David could never let his little girl sleep in a freezing, miserable apartment, so he stayed out there in the mud. He dug. He lifted. He swallowed the icy rain, clenched his jaw, and pushed the overwhelming exhaustion deep down into his gut. He willingly traded his own health for her warmth and comfort, but right now, the adrenaline that had miraculously kept him upright for the past 8 hours was entirely gone. In its place was a creeping, bone-deep cold that felt like liquid nitrogen pumping through his veins. David pushed himself off the door, staggering blindly toward the cramped kitchen. His vision blurred heavily at the edges. The dim yellow glow of the overhead kitchen light seemed to aggressively pulse and swim before his eyes. He desperately needed to make dinner. He needed to boil pasta, heat up some cheap sauce, and put on his usual brave, invincible smile. Lily was waiting quietly in her bedroom, probably drawing pictures or reading her favorite worn-out book. She fully expected her dad to walk in with his booming, cheerful voice, scoop her up into the air, and ask all about her day. He took one single step toward the stove, and the entire room violently tilted. His knees buckled completely beneath him. David crashed hard onto the floor, his shoulder slamming painfully against the base of the wooden cabinets. A suppressed, agonizing groan escaped his cracked lips. He lay there helpless on the cold floor tiles, staring blankly up at the ceiling. He could feel an unnatural, terrifying heat radiating intensely from his own skin. He wasn't just tired from a long day of labor. He was burning up from the inside out. A high-grade fever was seizing his entire body with terrifying, unstoppable speed. His teeth began to chatter uncontrollably, producing a hollow, clicking sound in the deadly quiet kitchen. He tried with all his might to push himself up off the floor. He commanded his thick arms to bear his weight just one more time. Nothing happened. His muscles simply and utterly refused to obey his brain's desperate commands. It was a profound, terrifying paralysis born of total physical collapse. With agonizing effort, he managed to drag his heavy, aching body across the floor, out of the kitchen, and into his small, dark bedroom. He didn't even have the tiny amount of strength required to peel off his damp, freezing work clothes. He just collapsed heavily onto the very edge of the mattress, automatically curling into a tight, shivering ball of misery. The darkness of the small room closed in on him, feeling incredibly heavy and suffocating. Then, through the ringing in his ears, he heard it. It was a small, distant sound coming from the hallway. It was the unmistakable, terrifying sound of Lily's bedroom door creaking open. David's heart hammered viciously against his aching ribs. Panic, sharp and completely blinding, pierced right through the thick fog of his rising fever. He heard the soft, familiar patter of her small feet walking on the hardwood floorboards. She was hungry. She was coming out to find him. What was she going to see when she looked into this room? She was going to see her giant, her ultimate protector, broken and shivering helplessly in the dark. She was going to be absolutely terrified. She would cry in panic, and he wouldn't even be able to sit up to wipe her sweet tears away. The parental guilt washed over him, feeling significantly more sickening than the physical illness itself. He felt like he had completely failed his only mission in life. He was supposed to be the unbreakable provider, the one who cooked the warm meals and chased away all the scary shadows. Right now, he was the shadow. He squeezed his eyes tightly shut, hot tears mixing freely with the cold, clammy sweat on his face. He bit his lower lip hard, tasting a faint metallic tang of blood, desperately trying to stifle the agonizing cough building deep in his chest. He just didn't want to scare her. He just wanted her to always be safe, to feel completely secure, to never ever know the brutal realities of the world outside their little walls. What is the most touching, sweetest thing your child has ever done to take care of you that left you choking back tears of pure pride and joy? Share that beautiful story with us down in the comments, and please keep it respectful and spam-free. The soft footsteps stopped dead right outside his bedroom door. David held his breath, his infected lungs burning fiercely with the immense effort. He waited agonizingly for the inevitable gasp of fear. He waited for that little, innocent voice to tremble and ask what was terribly wrong. He braced his soul for the absolute worst moment of his entire fatherhood. The brass doorknob slowly, agonizingly turned. A thin sliver of warm light from the hallway spilled across the bedroom floor, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the cold air. David squeezed his eyes even tighter, physically unable to look at the massive disappointment and deep fear he was absolutely sure would be painted on her face. But the expected cry of childish panic never came. There was only a deep, profound silence. Through the hazy, suffocating fog of his rising fever, David forced his heavy, aching eyelids open. The dim yellow light from the hallway cast a long, intimidating shadow across the worn bedroom floorboards. Lily stood perfectly still right in the middle of the doorway. She was wearing her oversized, faded pink dinosaur pajamas, tightly clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit by its worn-out ear. David desperately tried to speak, to force his voice to sound strong and tell her that everything was perfectly fine. But his throat was completely parched, feeling like cracked desert earth. Only a weak, raspy exhale escaped his trembling lips. He watched her wide, innocent brown eyes slowly scan the dark, depressing room. He saw her gaze finally lock onto his massive, shivering body curled helplessly on the very edge of the mattress. This was the exact nightmare scenario he had fought so hard to prevent. This was the exact moment he was going to break her precious heart and completely shatter her perfect, safe little world. But Lily didn't drop her favorite toy in shock. She didn't run away crying down the hall screaming for someone to help her. Instead, her small, delicate facial features shifted from a brief moment of childish confusion to an expression of intense, quiet determination. It was a look of absolute, unwavering focus that David had never once seen on her sweet face before. She gently placed her stuffed rabbit on the hardwood floor, turned on her heel, and silently disappeared back down the dark hallway. David's heavy heart sank even deeper into his aching chest. Did he scare his little girl so badly that she couldn't even stand to look at him? Was she hiding under her heavy blankets right now, terrified of the broken, helpless man who was supposed to be her invincible hero? The suffocating guilt of being a single father crashed down on him like a physical weight. There was absolutely no backup plan. No grandparents to call. No babysitter coming to the rescue. If he failed right now, she was entirely alone. He desperately wanted to crawl across the floor to comfort her, but the raging fever held him pinned to the bed like heavy iron chains. Minutes felt like agonizing, endless hours in that quiet, freezing room. What is the most effective way to teach a young child to share the heavy burdens of life, to naturally show deep empathy, and to willingly care for their parents from such a tender age? Drop your absolute best advice and sincere thoughts in the comments below, and please remember to keep it respectful and spam-free. May the Lord bless your home with abundant health, unyielding strength, and a heart full of gratitude and filial piety that keeps your beautiful family warm forever. Hit that subscribe button right now so we can continue walking this incredible journey of life together. Just as his dark, terrifying thoughts threatened to consume him completely, the soft padding of little bare feet returned to the hallway. The light spilling from the doorway was blocked once again. David blinked hard, trying to clear the stinging, hot sweat from his blurry eyes. Lily stepped carefully and deliberately back into the bedroom. She was walking agonizingly slow, her tongue poking out the corner of her mouth in a state of absolute, unbroken concentration. In her tiny, fragile hands, she was carrying the small, yellow plastic basin from their cramped bathroom. It was filled almost to the brim with warm water, sloshing dangerously close to the edge with every single uneven step she took. Draped neatly over her thin shoulder was one of his clean, white cotton washcloths. She wasn't a scared little girl desperately looking for her giant protector anymore. She was a brave little hero on a very important mission. David watched in absolute, stunned silence as his brave 7-year-old daughter cautiously approached the side of his bed. She set the heavy plastic basin down on the wooden nightstand with a quiet, careful thud. She didn't say a single word as she plunged the white washcloth into the warm water. Her tiny hands gripped the wet, heavy fabric tightly, twisting and squeezing with absolutely all the meager physical strength she possessed to wring out the excess water. She was mimicking, with heartbreaking accuracy, the exact same loving routine David performed for her whenever she caught a bad winter cold. She bravely climbed onto the edge of the mattress, her small knees sinking deep into the heavy blankets right next to his shivering body. With incredibly gentle, tender movements, she reached out and draped the damp, warm cloth directly across his burning, feverish forehead. A massive, uncontrollable shudder ripped through David's entire muscular frame. It wasn't a reaction to the sudden cold, but a reaction to the overwhelming, profound shock of her gentle touch. The immediate physical relief of the water was absolutely nothing compared to the intense, radiating warmth of her pure, innocent love. Then, she carefully reached back to the wooden nightstand and picked up his favorite heavy ceramic coffee mug. She held it tightly with both of her small hands, bringing it incredibly close to his cracked, dry lips. Her sweet, high-pitched voice finally broke the heavy, oppressive silence of the dark bedroom. It didn't shake with anxiety. It didn't carry even a tiny hint of fear or panic. "Daddy, drink some warm water," she whispered softly, her big brown eyes shining with fierce, protective bravery in the dim light. "I'm brave. I'm right here to take care of you, so you can be warm and strong again." That was the exact, beautiful moment the unbreakable emotional fortress finally crumbled to dust. The thick, heavy protective walls David had built around his hardened heart to survive this brutal world completely shattered into a million pieces. He let out a choked, wet sob that tore all the way up from the deepest depths of his soul. The hot tears he had been desperately fighting back all day long finally spilled over, rolling rapidly down his cheeks and soaking directly into the fabric of his pillow. They weren't tears of physical pain, exhaustion, or defeat. They were tears of overwhelming, indescribable pride and a profound, spiritual relief. He slowly raised his heavy, calloused right hand. His skin rough, cracked, and scarred from endless years of brutal manual labor, he gently wrapped his thick fingers around her tiny, soft, delicate hand. He pulled her small palm down to his feverish cheek, pressing it firmly against his face, as if it were the most precious, vital lifeline in the entire universe. Lily didn't pull away in surprise. She just smiled an incredibly soft, reassuring smile, leaning her little body in closer to his chest. The intense, bone-chilling cold that had completely paralyzed his muscles just moments ago seemed to magically evaporate under the power of her gentle touch. The brutal, punishing aches in his overworked joints faded quietly into the background of his mind. She sat there patiently in the semi-darkness, softly stroking his damp, messy hair with her other small hand. She quietly started humming the exact same gentle, soothing lullaby he always sang to her when the terrifying thunderstorms got too loud outside their window. In that incredibly quiet, sacred space, David finally understood the deepest, most beautiful truth of fatherhood. He realized with absolute clarity that when you pour every single ounce of your sweat, your blood, and your unconditional love into a child, it doesn't just disappear into an empty void. You are actively planting powerful seeds of empathy, fierce resilience, and profound human grace. And when the brutal storms of life inevitably bring you to your weak knees, that exact same love comes rushing back to pull you back up. It offers the absolute sweetest, most divine salvation a tired parent could ever possibly hope to experience. His precious little girl wasn't just surviving passively behind the protective walls he built. She had actively learned how to be the master builder herself. That beautiful, joyful tear rolling down a tough father's feverish cheek is the ultimate, undeniable proof that true love always comes full circle in the end. How has your child's sweet, innocent devotion ever pulled you completely out of your darkest, coldest moments? Please share your beautiful, heartwarming stories in the comments below, and let's spread that warm, positive energy to everyone watching today.